Hi guys, welcome to Bubba Bedtime Stories. How are you today? I hope you've been doing good. Today, we're going to be reading a worldwide famous story, Rapunzel. Once upon a time, a poor young couple lived in a cottage next door to an old witch. The witch grew many vegetables in her garden, but she kept them all for herself. One day, the couple had only a few potatoes left to eat. "Surely it wouldn't matter if we just took a few vegetables," said the wife, gazing longingly over the wall. So her husband quickly climbed into the garden and started to fill his basket. Suddenly, he heard an angry voice. "How dare you steal my vegetables?" "Please don't hurt me," begged the young man. "My wife is going to have a baby soon." "You may keep the vegetables," she croaked, "but you must give me the baby when it is born." Terrified, the man had to agree. Months later, the woman gave birth to a little girl. And although the parents begged and cried, the cruel witch took the baby. She called her Rapunzel. Years passed, and Rapunzel grew up to be kind and beautiful. The witch was so afraid of losing her that she built a tall tower with no door and only one window. She planted thorn bushes all around it. Then she locked Rapunzel in the tower. Each day, Rapunzel brushed and combed her long golden locks. And each day, the witch came to visit her, standing at the foot of the tower and calling out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." Rapunzel hung her hair out of the window, and the witch climbed up it to sit and talk with her. But Rapunzel was very lonely. Each day, she sat at her window and sang sadly. One day, a prince rode by and heard the beautiful singing coming from the witch's garden. As he hid behind the wall, he saw the old witch calling out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair." The prince saw a cascade of golden hair fall from the tower, and he watched the witch climb up it. When the witch returned to her house, he crept to the tower. "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair," he called softly. Rapunzel let down her locks, and the prince climbed up. Rapunzel was very surprised to see the prince, and delighted when he said he wanted to be her friend. From then on, the prince came to visit her every day. Months passed, and Rapunzel and the prince fell in love. "How can we be together?" Rapunzel cried. "The witch will never let me go." So the prince brought some silk, which Rapunzel knotted together to make a ladder so that she could escape from the tower. One day, without thinking, Rapunzel remarked to the witch, "It's much harder to pull you up than the prince." The witch was furious. "What prince?" she shouted. She grabbed Rapunzel's long hair and cut it off. Then she used her magic to send Rapunzel far into the forest. That evening, when the prince came to see Rapunzel, the witch held the golden hair out of the window, and he climbed up the tower, coming face to face with the old witch. "You will never see Rapunzel again," she screamed and pushed the prince out of the window. He fell into the thorn bushes below. The sharp spikes scratched his eyes and blinded him. Weeping, he stumbled away. After months of wandering, blind and lost, the prince heard beautiful, sad singing floating through the woods. He recognized Rapunzel's voice and called out to her, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel! At last I have found you," she cried. As her tears fell onto the prince's eyes, his wounds healed, and he could see again. Rapunzel had never been so happy. She and the prince were soon married, and they lived happily ever after, far away from the old witch and her empty tower. So I hope you enjoyed the story, guys. Aladdin. Let's get in. Once upon a time, a boy named Aladdin lived with his mother. They were very poor and often hungry. One day a man visited them, saying he was Aladdin's long-lost uncle. When he told Aladdin he would help him make his fortune, Aladdin and his mother were delighted. Aladdin traveled with him into the desert until they came to a rock. The man pushed it aside, revealing a hidden cave. "Climb down into this cave and fetch me my old brass lamp," the man said. "Don't touch anything except the lamp. Wear this magic ring to protect you." Aladdin did as he was told. The cave was filled with gold and jewels, but Aladdin touched nothing. At last he found an old brass lamp and carried it back to the cave entrance. "Pass it to me," his uncle said, "then I will help you out." But Aladdin wanted his uncle to let him out first. Then he said he would give him the lamp. This made his uncle angry. "Fool!" the man roared, and he rolled the rock back over the cave, trapping Aladdin inside. "Uncle!" Aladdin cried, "let me out." "I'm not your uncle," said the man. "I'm a sorcerer. Stay there for good if you won't give me the lamp." As Aladdin wrung his hands in despair, he rubbed the magic ring on his finger. Suddenly a genie sprang out and asked, "What do you require, master?" Astonished, Aladdin told the genie to take him home. In a flash, Aladdin was outside his mother's house. Still poor and hungry, Aladdin polished the old lamp, hoping to sell it to get money for food. But as he rubbed the lamp clean, another genie popped out. This time, Aladdin asked for food and money so that he and his mother could live in comfort. Life went on happily until one day, Aladdin fell hopelessly in love with the emperor's beautiful daughter. But how could he, Aladdin, marry a princess? Suddenly, he had an idea. He asked the genie of the lamp for gifts to give to the princess. When the princess thanked Aladdin for the gifts, she fell in love with him. They were soon married, and Aladdin asked the genie to build them a beautiful palace. Hearing that a wealthy stranger had married the princess, the wicked sorcerer guessed that Aladdin must have escaped with the lamp. One day, when Aladdin was out, the sorcerer disguised himself as a poor tradesman. He stood outside the palace calling out, "New lamps for old, new lamps for old." Aladdin's wife gave her husband's old brass lamp to the sorcerer, who snatched it away and rubbed the lamp. He commanded the genie to carry the palace and the princess away. "Oh no!" cried Aladdin, when he discovered his wife and home gone. Quickly he rubbed the magic ring, trying to make the genie appear. "Please bring back my wife and palace," Aladdin pleaded. "Sorry, master, I can't," said the genie. "I am less powerful than the genie of the lamp." "Then take me to her and I'll win her back," Aladdin cried. At once he found himself in a strange city, but outside his own palace. Through a window, he saw his wife crying and the sorcerer sleeping. Aladdin crept into the palace. He grabbed the magic lamp and rubbed it. "What do you require, master?" asked the genie. "Take us right back home," Aladdin said, "and shut this wicked sorcerer in a cave for 1,000 years." In a moment, the palace was back where it belonged. The sorcerer gone, Aladdin and the princess were safe, and they never needed to call on the genie again. So I hope you enjoyed this story, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. The Princess and the Pea. Once upon a time, there lived a handsome prince. He had loving parents, plenty of friends, and lived a wonderful life in his castle. But one thing made him sad. He did not have a wife. The prince had always wanted to marry a princess, but he wanted her to be clever and funny and loving and kind. None of the princesses that he met at parties and balls were quite right. Some of the princesses were too mean, some were too rude, some were too quiet, and some were too loud. Some were just plain boring. So the prince decided to travel the world in the hope of finding a perfect princess. He met many more princesses who tried to impress him with their beauty, their dancing, and their baking, but still none was quite right. "I'm never going to meet the girl of my dreams," he sighed to himself. "Cheer up, son," said the king. "You are still young. One day you will meet a wonderful girl, just like I met your mother." Several months later, when even the king and queen had begun to give up hope of their son ever finding a bride, there was a terrible storm. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the castle door. "I wonder who could be out on such a terrible stormy night," said the prince. When he opened the door, a pretty young girl stared back at him. She was soaked from head to toe. "Please, may I come in for a moment?" she pleaded. "I was traveling to see some friends, but I got lost in the storm, and now I'm very cold and wet." "You poor thing," said the queen. "You must stay the night. You cannot travel on this weather." The prince smiled at the girl. "What is your name?" "I'm Princess Penelope," she replied. "You all are very kind. I don't want to be a bother to you." At the word princess, the queen smiled to herself. She took the girl's hand and said, "Of course not. Let's get you warm and dry." Later, the prince listened contentedly as the charming princess chatted away over supper. She was clever and funny and loving and kind. By the end of the evening, he'd fallen in love. The queen was delighted when she saw what happened, but she wanted to be quite sure that Penelope was a real princess. She went to the guest room in the castle and placed a tiny pea under the mattress. Then she told the servants to pile 20 more mattresses onto the bed, and then 20 feather quilts on top of the 20 mattresses. The queen showed the princess to her room. "Sleep well, my dear," she said. In the morning, the queen asked Penelope how she'd slept. Penelope didn't want to be rude, but she couldn't lie. "I'm afraid I hardly slept a wink," she replied. "I'm so sorry," replied the queen. "Was the bed not comfortable? There are so many lovely mattresses and quilts." "It should have been very comfortable," replied the princess, "but I could feel something lumpy, and I am black and blue all over." The queen grinned and hugged the girl to her. "That proves it," she cried. "Only a real princess would be able to feel a tiny pea through 20 mattresses and 20 feather quilts." The prince was filled with joy. He had finally met the princess of his dreams. Not long after that, the prince asked Princess Penelope to be his wife. They married, and the prince was never unhappy again. And as for the pea, it was put in the royal museum as proof that perfect princesses do exist. So I hope you enjoyed the story, guys. Bye-bye. Snow White. Once there was a queen who longed for a daughter. As she sat sewing by her window one winter's day, she pricked her finger on the needle. As blood fell from her finger, she thought, "I wish I had a daughter with lips as red as blood, hair as black as ebony wood, and skin as white as the snow outside." Before long, the queen gave birth to a baby girl with blood-red lips, ebony hair, and skin as white as snow. She called her Snow White. Sadly, the queen died, and the king married again. His new wife was beautiful, but vain. She had a magic mirror, and every day she looked into it and asked, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And every day the mirror replied, "You, O queen, are the fairest of them all." But Snow White became more and more beautiful every day. One morning, when the queen asked the mirror who was the fairest, the mirror replied, "You, O queen, are fair and it's true, but young Snow White is fairer than you." Furious, the queen told her huntsman, "Take Snow White into the forest and kill her." The huntsman led Snow White deep into the forest, but could not bear to hurt her. "Run far away from here," he said. As darkness fell, Snow White came upon a little cottage. She knocked softly on the door, but there's no answer, so she let herself in. Inside, Snow White found a table and 7 tiny chairs. Upstairs, there were 7 little beds. Snow White lay down on the 7th bed and fell fast asleep. She awoke to find 7 little men staring at her in amazement. "Who are you?" she asked. "We are the 7 dwarfs who live here," said one dwarf. "Who are you?" "I am Snow White," she replied, and she told them her sad story. "You can stay with us," said the eldest dwarf kindly. Every day, the 7 dwarfs went to work while Snow White cooked and cleaned the cottage. "Don't open the door to anyone," they told her, worried the wicked queen might find her. Meanwhile, when the wicked queen asked her mirror once more who was the fairest that day, it replied, "You, O queen, are the fair, it's true, but Snow White is still fairer than you. Deep in the forest with 7 little men, Snow White is living in a cozy den." The queen was furious and vowed to kill Snow White herself. So she added poison to a juicy apple, then sent off to the forest, disguised as a peddler woman. "Try my juicy apples," she called out, knocking on the door of the 7 dwarfs' cottage. Snow White remembered the dwarfs' warning, so she just opened the window to take a look. When the queen offered Snow White an apple, she took a big bite. The poison piece got stuck in her throat and she fell to the ground. When the 7 dwarfs returned, they were heartbroken to find their beloved Snow White dead. They couldn't bear to bury her, so they put her in a glass coffin and placed it in the forest, where they took turns watching over her. One day a prince rode by and saw Snow White. The dwarfs told him her sad story. "Please let me take her away," begged the prince. The dwarfs could see he loved Snow White. They agreed to let her go. As the prince's servants lifted the coffin, one of them stumbled, jolting the poisoned apple from Snow White's throat, and she came back to life. When Snow White saw the handsome prince, she fell deeply in love with him. They soon married and lived happily ever after with the dwarfs. So I hope you enjoyed the story, guys. Bye-bye. Please like and subscribe for more fun videos. Come visit our channel for more epic videos.